So let us now create the file that we've been referring to, which is our login page, which is the page that's going to allow us to gain access. So they've registered. The user has registered. Now they need to be able to properly log into the system. So to log into the system, we're going to create a new file and we're going to call it login.php. And we're going to begin to create our file. Now, just like our register.php, we are going to include our database connection. Okay. But even before we do that, and after creating our opening PHP tags, we need to do something we did not do in register. Now, remember, in register, we're simply putting a new user into the system. But in login, we're actually allowing a user entry into the system. And we need to keep that information open for other pages in our website to be able to use. So in that case, we're going to need to start a session on this page. So we're going to say session start, and that should be session underscore start. And session start is going to start a session to allow session variables to be able to collect the information from the login of the user and pass it on to other pages. Then we are also going to require our database connection, which is in our includes folder, which is dbconnect. Let us not forget our semicolons. And I'm going to do something here which is similar to what we did before, which is to create an error variable, which is similar to our message variable that we created earlier in our register.php. Now there's something that I need to go back to and I need to include in our register.php, which I did not a while ago. And that thing is to use our message variable to provide the actual messaging. Because so far, we're putting information into the message variable, but we're not using the message variable anywhere. So right here, okay, inside of my body, I'm going to include an H2 for a visible title. I'm going to say register new admin. And below that, just above our form, I'm going to echo out our message. Now I'm going to use the PHP echo shorthand, which is this opening angular bracket question mark equals, which basically stands for opening PHP tags echo equals. And then I'm going to echo out my message variable. So no matter what the message is at this point, our message variable is going to echo out whatever the message is. And we have many, many things that our message variable could be from one point to the next. So at one point, our message could be nothing. At another point, our message could be all fields are required. At another point, it can be passwords do not match. At another point, it could be registration successful. At another point, it could be that username might already exist. And all of these will simply be echoed out from one point to another right in this location right here. That's why we store our messages in the message variable. So going back to our login, we've created an error variable similar to our message variable, and that variable is going to be used for us to be able to um, put out error messages if they occur. So we've started a session in login. We've required our database connection, and we have a variable to hold any login errors that we need to show later. So just as before, we're going to pull our information from a form And we're going to get that information checked against our database to ensure that our user can access. Now I mentioned a form and we currently do not have one, so we need to put one in. So I'm going to close my PHP tags because we have some HTML to put in. I'm going to put in my HTML boilerplate. I'm going to give this page a title of admin login. Then I'm going to put in an H2 with the same thing so that we have a visible title. Okay. Then I am going to put in my form. Now I've already created my form, so I'm going to copy and paste it. You may pause the video in order to be able to type it appropriately. So I'm going to paste it here. Now below my form, I'm also going to provide a location where my error messaging is going to reside. The only difference this time is that I'm going to put it inside of a paragraph that I'm going to also style. Okay, now I could have done it in the very same way that I did the first one, but in this case, just for differentiation, I'm just going to do it in a different way. So I am going to give it some inline styling, and inside of here, I'm going to use shorthand to echo out my error variable. And I am going to give it some inline styling, give the paragraph some inline styling. Okay, I'm going to use a style attribute, and that's going to simply make our error message red. Color, colon, red. And I'm going to close this. And I also need a semicolon as well. Okay, maybe let's use these double quotes instead. Okay, and this is our error messaging. And we're always big on user experience. So we're also going to put in a little link down here that says need an account. Let's give them a link just in case they are in need of an account. Space, and I'm going to put in an anchor here. And that anchor is going to point back to my register.php. And the paragraph text, or rather the anchor text, is going to be register here. So we've created our form. So let's go ahead now and, like before, build the engine that's going to take us through our login process. So similarly to before, we're going to check if, and I'm going to say server, it's supposed to be underscore server. So if server request method is post, request underscore method is equal to post, then everything that needs to happen is going to happen inside of here. And what needs to happen? We need to collect the username. So $username. And the username, like before, is going to be protected from SQL injection. So we're going to wrap everything in MySQLi underscore real underscore escape underscore string. And we're also going to give it the con Then we're also going to trim our included username. So I'm going to put in $ post, and I'm going to put in my username. Okay? And then the next thing that we're going to collect is going to be our password. And my password is going to be collected from $_post, and it's going to be gotten from the form input field, which is called password. And again, we're not escaping our password. Okay, we're not going to bother with escaping the password, because in this case, we're not putting anything into the database as such. We are checking what the user is entering. So we sanitize the username and we grab the password. Now, again, we need to go ahead and we need to put in, our query. Okay, now earlier on, we created one called SQL in our register. In this case, let's create one called query, which is going to query the database. So query is going to be equal to select, which is what we're going to be doing, ID. Okay, we're also going to be selecting the password from admins, where the username is equal to what the user actually put in. And that is going to be taken from our username. Okay, so that's our query. Of course, since that is our query, this is only half the battle. We now need to send that query to our database so that it can check and see if any results are actually available. So we're going to say result is equal to, and then we are going to uh, send the actual query and store the results in result. So we're going to say my SQLI underscore query, and we're going to pass it two values. One is going to be the actual database connection, and the other one is going to be our query. And that is how we are going to be sending our query to the database. So this is our query to check, okay, whether, we can get the ID and the password from the admins table, where the username is equal to the username that the user put in. So you see, the only thing we're sending into the database is actually the username, but we're not sending the password in. We're actually checking for the password. Now, what exactly happens when we get information back? Or what are we looking for in the information that we get back? Well, what we're looking for is for anything that is returned, okay, to be equal to what's in the database and what the user put in. So if we found exactly one user, we will go verify the password to compare the entered password with the one in the database that is hashed. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to say if, and we're going to check if the number of rows that are returned is equal to 1. And why are we checking if it's equal to 1? Because only one user should exist with the username that has been entered. So we are going to say if result, that's supposed to be $result, okay? And what is result? Result is that. So if result actually goes through and is good, so if result and MySQLi underscore num underscore rows Okay. And we're going to pass our result here is equal to 1. Okay, so if that goes through, then we're going to say that we would like to put the row of information that's gotten, we're going to put it into a variable called row or an array called row. And in order to change that information that's been taken out of the database into an array, we use MySQL I underscore fetch underscore assoc, and we are passing our results because that's the results is what was gotten from the database. Okay. And then in another variable called hash, because we're asking for the password, we are going to create a variable called hash, which is going to store the password that's taken from the database and has been converted into an array key. So we're going to say row, okay? And if you look at the syntax, you see that we're actually writing it in array syntax. We are collecting that password and we're putting that password into a variable called hashed. Okay? So right now, what we've done is we've found exactly one user and we want to verify the password and we want to see whether that password is actually comparable to the one that is in the database. So right here below our hash, we're now going to see if the password that is we're going to compare the two passwords, the one that the user entered and the one that's in the database, to see if they are one and the same. So we're going to use a function. We're going to say if, and we're going to use a pre-built function called password verify. So if password verify, and we're going to give it two things. We're going to give it the user's password, and we're also going to give it the one from the database, which is called hash. So if password verify compares password and hashed, okay, if it compares the two, okay, and they're one and the same, all right, then, okay, we're going to do the following. We're going to pass that information over to the session variables. So underscore session, and we're going to pass it into a session variable called admin. So that session admin is going to store our username, which the user put in, and the other session variable underscore, we're going to store the admin ID. And that admin ID session variable is going to store the ID of the row of information that was found. So that would be row ID. Okay, that would be row ID. Okay, so if the password matches, if we found exactly one user, we're going to use password verify to compare the two passwords. And if that works, if that is true, if that happens and they match, then we're going to store the username in a session variable called admin. We're going to store the ID of the information that's being found, and we're going to put that into into a session variable called admin ID. And then we're going to send the user somewhere. We need to send the user to a location after they have successfully logged in. And the most logical location to send them to would be a page that we haven't created as yet called admin dashboard or dashboard. So I'm going to put it in all the same. I'm going to say header And then I'm going to give it the location, and the location is going to be admin. So we're going to put that file in our admin folder, dashboard.php. Okay. And of course, I always like to exit my programs just to make sure that they don't, run indefinitely or continue to run in the background. So we exit. Okay. I have an error here, which is a typo. So I needed to put in my S for my SQLI. And now there is still one final thing that I need to do. We need to give helpful error messages if our username is not found or if the password is wrong. So let's go ahead and see if we can do that. So the first one we're going to do is to see if the password is wrong. Now, if we follow the structure of our curly braces, this is what is used to check for our password validity. So if password verify is what is used to check for that. So we're going to say else if the password is wrong, then it's going to produce an error message. So we're going to use our error variable, and inside our error variable, we're going to put a message which says incorrect password. Okay? And now if the entire check is wrong, meaning the admin user has not been found, okay? If we've checked all of the results and the admin user has not been found, then we're going to say else, okay? And that else is going to say admin not found or user not found. So let's pass on to our error variable the message user not found, exclamation mark. Okay, of course, we should not forget our semicolons. Let's put our semicolons in. Let us save and format our document. So that is our login process or our login for our system. Okay, it was a little bit of a lengthy process, but we managed to get it done. If I moved too quickly or if you may have missed something, you can always pause the video at any point in time to recheck or to go on and to type at your own pace. Okay, so in this video, we created our database connection. We created our auth check to protect our admin pages. We built a secure admin registration form with password hashing. We created a login page that uses sessions and password verification. And we added logout functionality to end the session. So in our next video, we're going to start to build out some of the other pages that are needed where our admins can manage the database. Good job sticking with it. I will see you in the next video.